You are listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Live.
Hello and welcome back to the Claret and Blue podcast for episode 3 in my mini-series of chatting to different Villa content creators in the Villa community. If you've not seen episode 1 and 2 just yet, they came out a few months ago. First episode was with Max Stokes from Villa on Tour, and the second episode was with Dan Bardell, formerly of the Villa View and now with The Athletic. On episode 3, I'm delighted to be joined by Regan Foy from Under A Gaslit Lamp. Regan, first of all, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Obviously dealing with isolation in my own way, but aren't we all?
For those of you who don't know, just introduce yourself first of all. Tell me who you are and what it is that you do in terms of the blog.
Okay, so I'm Regan. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Under A Gaslit Lamp. Obviously, I write my own stuff, but our writers send me their pieces and I edit them. I ask people for specific pieces to get their opinions on stuff that I might have a strong opinion on. Recording the podcast and stuff like that, really.
Talk to me about the blog then. Let's get stuck into it. Obviously here to talk about kind of the different content strands that we all do in the Villa community. How did it start? Who came up with the idea and what was the initial kind of hopes for it?
Initially, I was at uni. I studied English and journalism at uni, and I saw a lot of other places that for other teams doing content. And I thought, I think it was our relegation season. And I thought, right, let's try something. So I wrote something, and it wasn't very good, but I shared it amongst a couple of places that did content for Villa at the time. I got stuff back, and I was like absolutely lambasted. Like they turned around and said, "This is a load of
wow."
Yeah. So that kind of knocked the confidence a little bit, but a year or so later I thought, you know what, I'm going to really try and do this. So I bought the domain, and for some people they might not have any idea of who we are, but before we were called Under A Gaslit Lamp, we were called the Claret and View. And then I posted in a load of Facebook groups, Villa Facebook groups, asking if anyone wanted to write, and 2 people came back and said yes. One was Mark, who obviously is probably the most popular member of our team, especially on Twitter. And the other one was Harry, and they've been writing for me ever since. And since then, we've expanded into different areas and different things and grown the team. And for most of us, it's a hobby, and some of us it's obviously pushing for career aspirations.
It'd probably be remiss of us not to give Mark a full kind of introduction and who he is. You've mentioned him by his first name a couple of times, said, Mark's done this, Mark's done that. Who is Mark, and explain that relationship and how that's developed over time?
As I said earlier, I posted in a couple of Facebook groups, and Mark was one of the first people to come back to me. Obviously, a lot of people will know him as Mark Jarobi if they do listen to the podcast or listen to or read our content. And they'll know him on Twitter as @VillaMarkPGH. He's put money into it when I haven't been able to, because obviously we're all self-funded. And on a more personal level, he's been a very dear friend for 3 years, and I consider him one of my best friends, even though we've never met. Obviously, we were meant to the Crystal Palace game that's been postponed.
How do you find that kind of almost working relationship between the two of you? That one of you is here going to Villa games and from the area, and one of you is kind of 3,000 miles away or whatever it was you said. How does that work? In even something as simple as time zones, like how do you find the time to do things together?
Generally, if he's writing, I'll give him some pointers before I go to bed, and then he'll write it while I'm sleeping. For the podcast, there's at any point there's either a 4 to 5 hour time difference. So usually we'll record on his days off, and I will get home from work in the gym, and I'll sit down at 7 o'clock, and then we'll record for an hour or however long it is, and then get that edited. So it does pose some challenges, but generally it's not too bad. Obviously, he's very fond of waking up at whatever time he needs to watch the games. I know he's been in the pub at 8:30 in the morning, if not even earlier. But the time zone really doesn't make a difference. It's just something that you have to work around, really.
When did you kind of decide that introducing a podcast to your list of content was a good idea?
today, I think we've just been over a year doing the podcast. Since we started the blog, really, we wanted to do more than just written content. We wanted to... I remember very early on in our first year, I don't think Mark was involved in that, but it was me and Harry, the other person that joined around a similar time, and we were doing like almost like a Twitch stream but on Facebook. And then the season after, we really pushed out the written content, and we thought, we're posting nearly every day, as far as we can, and we couldn't really do video because it'd be like it'd be like this over webcam, and with the likes of yourselves over at the Villa View when you were there and when the Villa View still existed, we didn't want to kind of step into video and just do webcam stuff, because we didn't necessarily think we'd be able to do it justice in comparison to other content creators. So we thought we'll try and showcase our personalities a little bit, and we thought we'd start a podcast. I'm much more confident in my writing than I am with my speaking voice or my podcasting ability. So I think that if you gave me a topic off the top of your head, I could sit there and write something, and it would just literally come out of my fingers like word vomit. I'd like to think the quality is a bit better than vomit, but that it just spill out my fingers. Whereas if you asked me to talk about it, then I would stumble on my words and I'd be thinking, and it's a lot different when you're a much better writer than you are a talker.
Moving forward, why do you do Under a Gaslit Lamp? You obviously put a lot of time into it. It takes up a lot of effort. Why do you do it? What's in it for you?
For me personally, it's career aspirations. The goal is to work within the industry. I am qualified to work in the industry, but it's so kind of chock-a-block full of talent. It's very hard to get into, so I need a way to showcase my talent. And for me, that is the blog. I've interviewed players that other people might not have been able to get hold of. Like Berke Bjarnason, he left the club 8 months ago. So there's things that I'm trying to do to try and showcase my own talents, but other than that, I felt when we started it that we needed a blog dedicated solely to opinion, and obviously it's changed since then. We cover news and things like that, but when it first started, it was, I think our site tagline was an opinion blog for Aston Villa fans. And there's countless other content creators that all share their own opinion as well, but we really wanted to push that it was an opinion place for people's opinions, and that if you really had such a pressing opinion and you had the writing ability, or even you had the means to write it down, I could edit it and get your opinion to us. And it didn't really pan out like that. It's more of just we have a very set group of writers. We're always obviously looking to expand, but we have probably about 8 or so writers now that I will give them a topic and they'll go and often write their opinion on it.
You mentioned just about you being in it for career aspirations and wanting to prove that you're kind of good enough to get a job in the industry. Have you ever spoken about that anywhere before, either on social media or in the blog or on the podcast or anything like that?
There's the odd time that you obviously change your social media to try and push for things. So there's been times that my Twitter bio has said I'm a certain graduate from a certain university, and things like that. And obviously, you mention it when necessary. If you think there's an opportunity to be gained from something, you'll mention it. But other than that, no. This is probably the first time that I've said anything.
So obviously, you're doing it for those reasons, as you've said. Do you think that can affect the output in any way? Like you might avoid certain topics, or you might go down certain paths because you're trying to impress a certain element, or is it always just kind of that's a byproduct of what you do, and that it is a kind of fan-centric opinion blog first, and if it happens to be a portfolio piece, that's great, but you don't kind of write things or record things specifically for that?
I think if anything, it improves the standard of what we do.
Yes, I agree 100%. That's what I thought.
Yeah, because we're trying to impress a potential employer. There are things that I've published and they've been short, or I much prefer doing a long form piece and doing my research and and getting information from other journalists and things like that, and getting quotes, and just creating like a story for people to read that's not going to be over within 2 minutes. It's pushed me more to try and do more of those, and I think they're received relatively well. I'm not overly active on social media on my personal account. I'm overly active on the Under A Gaslit Lamp account. Really, I'm only using my personal account to share work that I'm proud of, or offer the odd random personal comment about apple crumble or something like I did yesterday.
Obviously, the Villa kind of fan media content creator, whatever you want to call it, community. I don't know whether this is because I'm a Villa fan and I only take notice of it, but it seems to be there's so much stuff out there. There's so many people out there creating things. Do you kind of look at the others with a competitive edge, thinking, well, I want to do that story better than somebody else, or I want to do that podcast episode better than somebody else? Or do you think that having such a rich community of other creators enhances your own work?
I do refer to it as a hobby, although I have aspirations behind it. There's so many things in our community because of the quality of what is produced already. Like when James, who now works at Birmingham Live, wrote for 7500 to Halt, he would do piece after piece after piece that I thought was amazing, and I wouldn't think I could do that better or anything like that, but it would push me to improve the quality of my work. So I got in contact with Matthias Sarkic's mom and asked how he was doing in Scotland when he was on loan at Livingston, and I'd never thought of doing stuff like that before, but it paid off and it worked really well. And then another thing in terms of the collective of content creators, including Greg at The Athletic, is that everyone's so happy to share each other's stuff, and there's no real animosity between people. I would say that a lot of people would think that 7500 to Halt and Under A Gaslit Lamp and the Villa View and all that were rivals, and we were competing for other people's attention, but that really wasn't the case, because we speak to each other regularly, and we banter with each other, and we ask each other for opinions on our work before we post it and things like that. And I think a lot of people don't realise that that's the way that it is.
Something that's quite unique was the physical magazine that you released last year. The first time I've seen any of the new kind of fan media do anything like that. Explain the process of where the idea came from and what it was like to get a physical magazine that I think I've still got in my wardrobe. I'm looking at it now. I'm pretty sure it's in the back of there somewhere. And sent out to however many people it was, and what was that whole experience like?
I did my final year project at university on magazine design, and we had to go out and take our own photos and things like that, and kind of create articles. And I thought, I've got these skills and I'm not putting them to use. And that there is the Heroes and Villains magazine that gets sold at Villa Park, but I thought I can do something a bit different and in a different kind of style. And I'd never heard of it before, but James pointed me in the direction of the Square Ball, the Leeds fanzine, and I think that's digital only. But I wanted to have, physical copies of things that people could hold in the hand and read. The amount of, we had a kind. I tweeted about it and said, would anybody be interested in this? And there was a bit of interest. And then I tweeted about it again, and there was a bit more interest. And then we put them up for pre-order, the first volume, and it was retweeted by so many people and liked by so many people, and we sold out our because I put a limited run, because otherwise I'd have spent thousands on it. We put a limited run out, and we sold out from that in 24 hours. That was crazy. I never expected that in my wildest dreams. And I had the PayPal app on my phone, and it was literally just popping up with like someone buying something like literally every minute. It was really crazy. Yeah, it was just something that I really enjoyed doing. But I'd set myself a time frame to get it done in 4 weeks. By the end of the season, and that was the most stressful time that I've ever had whilst working on Under A Gaslit Lamp. I managed to get it done and sent out, and packaging 180 magazines and writing the addresses on them and things like that was very tiring weekend. But I've got it here, the first edition. This is the only one that remains with me. All the rest have been sent out elsewhere. But we're working on a volume 2, which is a test print is also in my hands now. It's available to pre-order. Just throw that out there. But yeah, it's
cheeky plug.
But it's just something that I really enjoy working on, and I think having more time this time around to do volume 2 is allowing me to improve the overall design and the amount of time that I'm spending on specific things. So the exclusives in there look better, and that's the thing about these as well. Obviously, you have to pay for them, but it's exclusive content that isn't available elsewhere until at least the next volume is going to be coming out. So, as an example, to promote volume 2, I published a piece that I wrote in volume 1 about Gabby Agbonlahor. But it's been 9 months, 8 months, 10 months, whatever, since you've received that first bit of exclusive content. It was another thing as well to add to kind of the portfolio piece. I can go into an interview and say I've made this, and obviously I've had people writing for it and I've designed it and whatnot, and that it acts almost as an addition to a CV, I suppose.
What was the thinking behind focusing so much on the women and doing a Villa women's exclusive podcast? Initially,
we started it, and it was not this season, the season before, and it was just nobody was doing anything about them, or if they were, it was the odd time. So we started last season, and we didn't cover them as regularly as we could have, just because the men's team were getting more attention in every area, including us. So we covered them when we could, and we managed to get exclusive interviews with the players and the manager and things like that. But over the last summer, right at the start, towards the end of the season, I thought we need to offer as much attention to this club as possible, because they deserve it. We always did a podcast, and the last 10-15 minutes or so, we'd concentrate on the Villa women. And we thought, if someone isn't interested in that, then they're going to just leave and they're not going to hear what we have to say at the end of the podcast. Can we do a singular podcast and try and promote it in a way that gets people interested, so that those who want to hear about the Villa women can listen to it anyway, but then we can kind of try and attract other people to it? And generally, from the numbers we've received, we get a similar amount of listeners to both the men's and women's podcasts. So generally, I think they just like hearing me and Mark talk more than anything. I went to, I think it was the opening game of the season against Sheffield United women, and it was just an incredible experience. Granted, it wasn't 44,000 people at Villa Park, but it was 300, 400 people. And the family feel at Boldmere when Villa women were playing, and that you had people like Emma Follis's nan stood on the sidelines wearing a Follis shirt. It was really kind of like a feel good feeling at the club, and at the same time, you've got the likes of Melissa Johnson and Emma Follis scoring absolute worldies, on a week to week basis, and I really don't understand why people aren't more interested in them.
Question first of all, we'll start with the more negative one to begin with. What do you enjoy least about doing a blog and a podcast in your spare time?
I think probably the negative reactions that you can get sometimes. Some content that you'll do will be really kind of commended, and you'll get a lot of stuff. You'll get a lot of stuff come back to you in terms of positive feedback. But then, if you even write perhaps a bad piece, or people consider it to be a bad piece, some of the comments that you can receive can be quite soul-crushing. And, I think everyone's been through it when they've received negative feedback. And, constructive criticism is all well and good. But when, people are disregarding everything else that you've done for the last year or 2 years or 3 years, and just said, oh yeah, this work is really bad, or this blog is really bad, it is quite soul destroying. And I'm not afraid to say that, and I know others have been in the same boat, that like I've had a bad day, got home, wrote something, it's been lambasted, and then I've sat there and cried. I think that's only happened like once or twice, but when things in life are getting on top of you, and then you're using your outlet, and that kind of adds on to it, it can be quite hard.
How do you deal with that then? Is there any advice for you can share with other people that potentially go through that?
Personally, I try and avoid anything that could be construed as negative in terms of my writing. You know, if I'm criticising a player or criticising a movement by the club or whatever, I try and avoid that for a couple of days and just try and work on something that I think will kind of sit well with the fans. And something that I'm really proud of, and then usually that gets decent feedback and my confidence kind of restored. It's an endless cycle of just high and low confidence, really.
So the flip side to that, we'll end on a positive. What's the thing that you enjoy most about the blog and the podcast?
I think I'll give you two answers to this. One is that I enjoy the friendships I've made through it. I think the team that's behind me, the friends that I've made in that regard, like Mark, Harry, there's Matt, there's Andrew, there's Simon, there's loads of us, and as well as that, the friendships that I've made outside of Under a Gaslit Lamp, with yourself, James, Dan, everyone kind of like that, and it is a real great experience to be a part of. And then other than that is just the opportunities that it's provided me. The opportunity to speak to ex-players or media personalities, or the opportunity to give my opinion to other outlets like the Sportsman or other places like that. It's a hobby at the end of the day. Whether or not it gets me where I want to be in life, whether or not, my content continues to improve or whether it worsens or whatever, it is and will always be a hobby. And it's something that I like or enjoy spending time doing. So long may that continue.
Good answers. I really like that. It's a nice way to wrap up. So, Regan, thank you very much for joining us on the Claret and Blue podcast this afternoon. I'm not sure when this is going to go out at this point, but we'll see. I imagine we'll all still be at home, so something for people to listen to and tune in. I like these little chats where we get to talk about kind of almost the unseen work that creators go through. So, yeah, thank you for jumping on Skype for the last hour or so and chatting with me. Thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me.
I would shake your hand, but obviously we're not together and we're not allowed to either, so I'm just going to give you a thumbs up via the camera and just have to receive that.
I'll get the ante back out just in case.
Yeah, just in case. Yes, so if you enjoyed this episode, please do let us know. Leave an iTunes review if you want to see more stuff like this. Thanks again, Regan, for joining me, and we'll see you again with another episode of the podcast in the coming days, I guess. Thank you very much, and up the Villa.
Thank you for listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode. Until then, up the Villa.